Yes,
We're live.
All right, so excellent. We're up and running, and we have a special guest here. We got Vaughn all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Vaughn, I had asked to take a look at the outline and gave you guys a new outline. Just kind of was able to synopsize a little bit better some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, so it tightens it up because we have a previous outline that I gave you guys that has all of the prophecies from the book of Daniel, but Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 9, Daniel chapter 11, and 12 all relate to, the second coming and end times, and it's a little bit too involved. So what I did is try to melt it down into the 70 weeks of Daniel, which is what our big board, features there. And we'll be able to talk about that a little bit tonight. And then what we may do is we're gonna emphasize the first 69 weeks of years this week, and depending upon how we are with time, we'll go into the 70th week, depending upon how much time we have tonight, or we may just defer that entire thing until next week. So again, we have a couple of announcements. We got David here. David, of course, is our star Miami Beach High School graduate. Congratulations, David. And so, David, you got into school. Where'd you get in?
NYU.
NYU. Those you don't know, New York University. David, when are you going to be starting?
August 29th, I go up.
Okay.
Start like the 2nd or 3rd of September.
Okay, so you'll be leaving us on the 29th of August for New York City, man.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll be praying for you.
All right there in the West Village, man, Washington Square Park, my old favorite hangout. I did a lot of studying at NYU's law school, so I know that like the back of my hand. So you're going to be in a good spot. Do you have a dorm already set up?
I signed up then, told me yet.
So, all right, but you'll be in the village somewhere around, I guess, Washington Square Park.
Yeah.
Good area, man. Good, nice, a lot of cafes. You can walk to pretty much everywhere you want to go and all of that stuff. And then we got Vaughn here. Vaughn flew down from Milwaukee because he had an international business consultation with a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 company that he can't tell me about because he signed a confidential paper, so he's not able to divulge the name of the company, but at least it got him in town. So I asked Vaughn to put together some questions based upon the outline that I sent to him earlier this week and all that. So did you get a chance to print that out? And you have it?
I have it right here.
You have it. Okay. So at the appropriate time, we'll have you go ahead and start us out because I know you have a flight back to Milwaukee, or where are you up to now?
Chicago.
Okay, you're going to Chicago now, and so this company that you're in town for, that's going to be having you set some stuff up for Asia, huh?
Yes.
All right.
So they're buying a $17 billion U.S. company. And so, therefore, they want me and some people in my company to be part of their strategic management team.
What industry?
Say again?
What industry?
Is that confidential as well?
Communications.
Communications. For those of you who don't know, Vaughn has a business background. Vaughn, you have your Master's of Business Administration from where?
From Duke University.
Okay, so we got Vaughn with his Duke MBA, and then undergrad, were you at Duke as well?
No, NC State.
NC State, okay. And then, of course, we got Steve representing Auburn University with a journalism degree. Got David heading up to NYU. And, of course, we have our resident scholar, Ben, who has both his undergrad at Harvard University and his MBA from the Wharton School, which is an arch rival right here with Vaughn and Duke. And, of course, we got Phil, our
Finally, I'm learning the truth.
There you go. Now, Phil, I know you got your your background in professional soccer in Europe. Where'd you play college soccer?
The system is not the same in Europe. It's different between the school and the soccer. You have teams that you play with, and you don't really have a scholar championship.
Okay.
So I went to the University in France. I studied sociology.
At the University of France?
Yes, I have a master of sociology.
Oh, really?
And then I played soccer apart. So
after you did your master's?
No, at the same time.
Oh, did you really?
At the same time, I was to the soccer class in Strasbourg, and I was going to the university.
Okay.
So generally, the soccer players have the bachelor and they stopped. I was able to have my bachelor in 2 years. Later, I made my master's. So
Oh, that's good. So you got it all done in 3 years.
yes,
Very good. And Ingrid here, obviously, Ingrid did some studies at Harvard Business School, which nobody else has done anything at Harvard Business School. So we got Harvard Business School, Duke, and Wharton, and Andre, where are you now?
FIU.
FIU. So we got Michigan and Georgetown up here. We got all of the academia.
And NYU Law. NYU Law.
Yeah.
NYU Law. We got Georgetown. Georgetown Law School in Michigan. Yep. But I did studies at NYU Law for the bar when I was in New York. So that's where I did all my, my weekend studies and all that, my weekday studies, as a matter of fact, as well. So pretty much I was there like 7 days a week for a period of time, which is good because that's like my favorite part of New York City. It's right there in the West Village. So all right. So we're going to be looking at Daniel tonight, and like I said, I'm going to have Vaughn, pick out. You did 6 questions. We're going to break this out into a couple of different areas. We've got the first 69 weeks of the years and then the 70th. So what we're going to find out is Daniel was, anybody know who was Daniel, Steve? Okay. Ben, who was Daniel?
Daniel was a prophet at the time of Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. Where was he prophesying out of?
Out of Babylon.
All right, there you
He was
go.
in exile.
He was in exile. He was exiled from where?
From Jerusalem.
From Jerusalem, that's right. So, we find out Daniel was actually a bright young guy like Vaughn and David. Like, in fact, he was a young Jewish kid, as a matter of fact. And he was really, really smart. So, he would have gotten into NYU and probably Harvard as well, just like David. And since he was really smart, when Nebuchadnezzar eventually invaded Israel and the city of Jerusalem, he killed the older guys and took the women and younger guys captive. And that was kind of the technique that the Babylonian Empire used when they went in and conquered a nation. They didn't want to waste resources. So when they say, Vaughn, you were off for you. Wait, you got an MBA from Duke? Yeah, you know about the internet? All right, we're going to take you back to Babylon and give you a job. And so when they find out that there's some Harvard guys, in the court at Jerusalem, instead of killing those guys, they took those guys back to Babylon as captives, and basically, after sort of culturalizing them into Babylonian culture and society, and more particularly government, they gave them jobs in the government or the kingdom of the Babylonian Empire. And so Daniel was probably 15 or 16 at the time that he got deported out of Babylon, and 3 of his friends who were also academically accomplished scholars got deported as well. Who were those guys? Anybody remember who his 3 friends?
Abednego.
That's one of them.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Shadrach,
Meshach, and Abednego.
Okay.
The fire eaters.
Yeah, those are the guys that got thrown into the fiery furnace because they refused to do what?
To
Pray,
bow
bow down to the
Bow
God.
down and worship the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
We said that he's a,
Now, when you say he, remember, we're on the internet, so identify who you're talking about so people that are watching you and listening to you, because they can't see your face, they'll know who you're talking about. Now, the he is who?
Daniel.
Okay.
So was Daniel more of a prophet, or was he more of someone who really understood prophecy? Because when you read Daniel 9, how it's saying he studied, so he was studying Jeremiah, and he was like, I studied and I know the books and the numbers of the prophets. So to me, it was more, I really understand what the prophets were saying, and here's my interpretation of the prophet. Not necessarily that Daniel was a prophet, but he was good at studying what the prophet said and interpreting what they said.
Well, I would say he's both, because I would say that initially he gets brought over to Babylon. He gets a position in the government because he's really bright, and over time he's becoming an advisor, the same way you are to this Fortune 500 corporation. he became an advisor to King Nebuchadnezzar. So he got moved up through the ranks, as did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, Daniel was also a very faithful student of the Word of God. And so as Vaughn kind of tipped us off, he was studying something, and it turns out that something was the book of Jeremiah, which was already committed to a scroll. You know, they had the Torah scroll, which had the first 5 books of Moses, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. And they also had some of the earlier major prophetic books. Daniel hadn't written his down yet, but Jeremiah, who had preceded Daniel, actually had written his down. So God had told Jeremiah a bunch of stuff. And some of the stuff that God told Jeremiah was this, was that because Israel was a whoring after what?
Other gods.
No, the
Other
gods.
gods.
You should go after
They weren't going to the strip club, but as a nation, they were doing what, Ingrid?
They were going after them, serving them, worshiping them.
And some of the worship of the other gods, like Moloch, and
Mhm.
Milcom, and the gods of the Sidonians and the Phoenicians, guess what that required? It required
Sacrifices
blood
for the
sacrifice.
towers, building high towers.
Absolutely. They built the high towers. That's where we get our pyramids and ziggurats from. And it also included child sacrifice, because behind all these false gods like Milcom and Marduk and Moloch was really Satan in disguise. He would put on different disguises to appeal to whatever the particular culture was, and he would always sort of spill the beans on his identity because he had a trademark, which was kill your kids and I'll give you advancement, I'll give you riches, I'll give you whatever. You know, and some people were suggesting, you know, on the internet, you know how like the entertainment industry of today is based on blood sacrifice. How many of you guys have heard sort of stories like that? Like,
Yep.
you got Lady Gaga had a really good friend when she was actually a student at NYU as well. And she lived in an apartment over in the West Village near NYU. And she had a really close friend who was also a performer as well. And she was, while a student at NYU, she would play the piano and play in some of the clubs. For those of you familiar with that part of Manhattan, you know, you got the Blue Note, which is a world famous jazz club there, and a lot of different places where young performers could go to perform. And the argument was her girlfriend was actually a better performer than she was. And, you know, she got in negotiations with a record deal, and some people have suggested that in order to be able to cross a certain dollar threshold, you got to make a blood sacrifice. And that she offered to have her friend killed so she could have a big deal, because her friend was really the person. If rumors are to be believed, now I didn't run into either of them when I was in the West Village, so I don't know from personal experience, but this is what people are saying, that she made the deal with the powers behind the labels to have her friend bumped off so she could get her very first big record deal. And it turns out her friend ended up falling off the side of one of those high rises. I don't know if it was one of NYU's dorms, but it was certainly in the area of one of the dorms you'll be staying in, David. And she ended up dead. Next thing you know, this woman becomes Lady Gaga, gets a record deal, and becomes the most famous, you know, pop artist in the history of pop music for a very short period of time. About what, 2009 or so? She's came from out of nowhere, right? Right? And so that was the argument of the blood sacrifices in the industry. How many of you guys, not to segue away, but you guys know I was doing free additional material at no additional cost. This particular past weekend, pretty bloody weekend in the history of the United States, right? But interestingly enough, I've got a client who is an Israeli musical artist, and he just was in the process of negotiating a record deal with an American company, and so I did the contract for him. So I was at his house a couple of times, and he lived up in Broward County, and it turns out that, he had talked about, a different musical artist. And I brought up the fact that a musical artist had passed away recently this past weekend. It's kind of related to some of the things that we were talking about in his wife, who's also very, very involved with Kabbalah. And Kabbalah actually started out as part of what you were talking about, Vaughn, which is whether Daniel was a prophet Or did he just study the Word of God? He not only studied the Word of God, I'm jumping all over the place, but once I get rolling, I start putting the pieces together. He also was part of a group of astrologers who studied the stars that eventually became known as the Magi, the wise ones, and that's where we get the story of the three wise men, and the wise men saw the star in the east and came into the east. They came from out of the west. They came from out of Babylon because this group of stargazers or astrologers, astronomers, as opposed to astrologers who foretell the future by looking at the stars, they were astronomers and they could see certain things and patterns in the stars. And it's been suggested by some Bible scholars that Daniel started that group. And that's how the wise men came from, out of the west, out of Babylon, to Bethlehem to see the star. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying about the musical artist thing, this whole blood sacrifice thing ties back into ancient Babylonian paganism, where at the time of Daniel and preceding Daniel in Babylon, they were worshiping their false gods by doing human blood sacrifices. And that sort of carried forward into the nations surrounding Israel, and Israel picked up some of those habits, which is what Jeremiah wrote about, which is why God allowed the Babylonian captivity to punish them. And the argument is that the musical industry of today is really a harbinger or harkens back to ancient Babylonian paganism. And my musical artist, his wife was, also involved in Kabbalah. And Kabbalah, actually, which is a form of Jewish mysticism, some people don't realize, actually started in ancient Babylon. And it was during this period of time that we're studying today, the Babylonian captivity that is featured in Daniel chapter 9, that Kabbalah actually started. Kabbalah was really ancient Babylonian paganism, which included blood sacrifices and all kinds of occultic practices, studying the stars, giving credence to certain periods of time. And this time of year, pretty much from April 21st up through June 21st, is a period of time in the occult and Satanism where blood sacrifices are made. And May Day, which was Beltane and Imbolc and some of the really important sort of occult holidays, fall in a period from April 21st through June 21st. And, this person said, yeah, don't worry, because June 21st is coming, and at that time there'll be a restoration of balance in the cosmos. And for those that are in the know in the occult, they understand that it's during this period of time, April 21st to June 21st, that blood sacrifices for the coming year have to be made to appease the gods, whether that god be, as the Celtic Druids worship, referred to as Stephen. I saw the movie on TV again the other night. You mentioned it a couple of times. The Wicker Man, the Druids in England and Ireland referred to. Say that, Steve.
Solstice is coming. That's on the 21st.
Yeah, solstice is coming up. That's when it all ends. So the Druids call him the Wicker Man, and other people call him by different names. But I think that it's interesting that we noted that, a real famous entertainment industry individual died on April 21st. Who was that guy? Prince died on April 21st, which is the beginning of this period of occultic sacrifice. And entertainment industry and the occult, there just seems to be irrefutable evidence dabbling in entertainment industry contracts and the like, and interest in music and all that from childhood onward. I can't get around the fact that there seems to be some type of a link between the entertainment industry's success and tragic deaths that pop up out of nowhere. So you have Prince dying on April 21st, and then just shortly after that, you get Muhammad Ali, right? And David had a question.
Do you actually see like strange things in these contracts?
In the contracts themselves that I'm looking at, you're going to be talking about language sort of like, can the artist have exclusive rights, or is the artist free? And Prince kind of, interestingly enough, had a long war with Warner Brothers, one of the larger labels, over his liberty and his ability to be free from a contract he signed with Warner Brothers when he was 17 years old and still in high school. But the contract agreed to pay him $100 million, so people were thinking, like, is he losing his mind? He wants to breach a $100 million guaranteed contract. And he did because he was saying, yeah, but I don't own my songs. When Purple Rain plays on the radio, it's nice, but I don't own it. Warner Brothers owns that song, and they're getting paid 95% of the profits every time the song is bought, purchased, or played, and they only get like residuals. They own my masters, and so he negotiated with them, whatever, and finally he got free. And interestingly enough, and here's another interesting sort of serendipitous occurrence in the entertainment industry that relates to sort of this period of time from April 21st through the summer solstice and sacrifices and the cult and the like. Interestingly enough, after several years of debate and battling legally between Prince and Warner Brothers, he had hired a lawyer in 1996 to negotiate the end of his Warner Brothers contract, and basically he got free from that contract. And Warner Brothers said, okay, I don't have to pay you the $100 million, and you're free to go record music for whoever you want to. And so that happened in 1996, but that wasn't the end of the legal debate and sort of internecine warfare between Prince and Warner Brothers, because they still owned his masters too. Purple Rain, 1999, Little Red Corvette, all that stuff, they still owned it, and he was still bitter about it. But finally, after many years of negotiation, Warner Brothers basically took it on the chin. Internet, Prince was like going on the Tavis Smiley show with his suits and ties, and he wrote Slave on his face, and he sounded more like Vaughn with an MBA from Duke, than he sounded like a rock musician or whatever. And he was talking about why he should have the ownership rights, and he started saying, all you artists out there, you better own your masters. And I think I remember that what's the blonde chick? She has the short hair. Pink. They were saying, she related a story where she kind of met Prince the first time she met him at the Grammys or something like that. She didn't like him. She said, I walked him, he's kind of obnoxious. But I walked up and, he's a big superstar. And I said, oh, hey, how are you? And, so proud, happy to meet you. And he said to me, do you own your masters? And I was like, what? And he said, well, you ought to, and you better find out whether or not you do. And he just turned and walked away. And she didn't understand how important that was, but artists today, of course, realize how important it is to own your masters. And my client, who just was able to help with that contract, one of the nice things about his contract is that he was giving a non-exclusive rights contract, so he could sign with these people and sign with other people as well, and he owned all his masters. But I say all that to say that on April 18th, which is, literally 3 days before the beginning of April 21st, the ownership and copyright rights of all of Prince's catalog, after negotiation, was transferred back from Warner Brothers to Prince himself. So for the very first time in his life, he actually owned the masters. He had the ownership right to Purple Rain, 1990, all these classic hits that you knew about. And then, interestingly enough, 72 hours later, he was dead. And found in an elevator. And so the question is, ownership rights on those, who gets it? Doesn't have a will? Does it go to the estate, or does it revert back to Warner Brothers? So just interesting that at the beginning of this occultic time frame of sacrifice and death for benefit and wealth and in the future, which all relates back to ancient Babylon, which we're going to be studying about today, and starts on April 21st and runs through June 21st, relates oftentimes to the entertainment industry. And again, this past weekend, we saw like 3 really interesting things happening right here close to home for us. We're here in Miami, Florida, that we had an interesting or unfortunate tragic incident actually occur, which was what? Okay, Vaughn was up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So
the
he
massacre.
right.
49 people died. Yeah.
Well, right, 50 people.
Well, 49.
Well, actually 50.
Well, we don't count him.
Oh, well,
That's
I count 50 is 50. But, 50 is a very important number in the occult. And, the penta number is very big, 5-pointed star, very important in the study of the occult and the like. But yeah, you had the greatest mass shooting in the history of the United States of America. But it didn't occur in New York City, which is what you would expect. Or maybe Los Angeles, which is, you know, a very significant, important city, but in Orlando, of all places, Central Florida and Orlando.
Is it along the ley line, I heard?
Well, it's home of the Magic Kingdom, the happiest place on earth, which that's a whole nother story. It's home of the Magic Kingdom, which is the happiest place on earth, and which is tied in. You read the stories about Walt Disney and his involvement in shadowy occultic organizations, and the suggestion that Disney World and Disneyland aren't really for entertainment purposes, but are places designed for mind control of children and the like, and so on and so forth. But even more interesting than that is that just a few hours prior to that, a couple of blocks away, was another killing. But not, again, in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, but also in Orlando, only a few hours early, a few blocks away, not at a gay nightclub, but at another nightclub, which was the venue for a girl who was performing, who finished the second runner-up in the voice competition, Christina Grimmie, who was on her way to, success in the industry. She was the next up-and-coming pop star. She sang a couple songs, and she was signing autographs outside the venue, and the lone crazed gunman, which we see in every one of these, these assassination situations, is always the little crazed lone gunman comes up, and as she's trying to give him a hug, shoots her point blank range in the head and kills her. And she was only 22. Now, interesting thing about her is that she was raised in supposedly a very devoutly Christian family. She got discovered by doing Christian music on YouTube, and she was discovered by the mother of Selena Gomez, who was, of course, a famous star out of the Walt Disney World and the like.
She did the tribute and everything.
Yeah,
here.
She did the
The
tribute.
very next week.
And David,
Katy Perry was also raised in
I do know that. Yep. But getting back to the Selena thing, Selena, Gomez, she did a tribute right down the street, right at the American Airlines Arena, and people were like, why, or what? Well, because they were best friends. And it turns out they were best friends because it was Selena Gomez's mother, who also, rumors suggest, have ties to the occult. And again, all this is relational back to what we're studying in Daniel chapter 9 tonight, because of what we would call witchcraft, or Wicca here in the United States of America, really was the syncretistic religion of state back in ancient Babylon. And it got carried into the nation of Israel, and then it got carried forth into the Gentile nations, and it carried itself forth through all of the centuries, right along into modern day through Druidism in the Middle Ages, and after the Middle Ages survived on in England and Ireland and Scotland in the form of Freemasonry, and came over along with the Pilgrims and eventually made its way here in the United States of America. And then you have these entertainment industry hubs like Los Angeles, where you have the recording industry, movie industry, and the TV industry. And then you have places like Orlando, which is the centerpiece of Walt Disney World, the world's most famous entertainment amusement park. Amusement means to what? Etymologically speaking, the term amusement means what, Ben?
Distraction. Forget.
Let's see. If I am musing, Herb, what's wrong with you? Man, I got this big case coming up, and I'm just musing over the difficulties that will come, during this complex trial. Musing. M-U-S-E. So you're thinking, you're concentrating, focusing. So you throw the word A prior to the subject in there. It actually gives you, from a grammatical standpoint, the nullification of. So amusement means to not think, to be sort of brainwashed into a state of hypnotism, where you're not able to intelligently, process thoughts, which is why you have amusement parks. You go there to kind of be whitewashed into not being able to think. Dave?
That would be kind of similar to entertain, right?
Exactly, and that actually is where you have the link between the entertainment industry, amusement parks, and entertainment can be anything, right? Music, television, movies, anything that distracts you from being able to intellectually, cognitively think about what's happening in front of you is somewhat dangerous. And so you have Disneyland and Walt Disney Worlds established by, Walter Disney or Walt Disney, who was allegedly, what'd you say, Steve?
33rd degree Mason.
33rd degree Mason and heavily involved in the occult. So, thought it was interesting that this child star, Selena Gomez, was made famous by Walt Disney and the Disney Entertainment Complex that continued on long after his death, and now is one of the most important entertainment conglomerates in the world. It's also a multi-billion-dollar corporation which basically owns the city of Orlando. And so you see things like that, and then you find out that Selena Gomez's mother is the one who found this girl, this Christian artist, Christina Grimmie, who was killed tragically, some 24 hours before the worst mass shooting in the history of the United States of America, about a block away. And her mother, who allegedly is also involved in occultic practices and Wicca and things of that nature, basically had her husband become her manager and got her a deal, got her signed with a record label called Island Records. Island Records is famous and important because they have a star on their label. And who's that? Who's that guy? Where's the Bangs from Canada? Always getting arrested for driving up and down Indian Creek Drive in his Lamborghinis and all that. Justin Bieber, of course. Same label that Bieber's on. This girl gets the deal of a lifetime. But because she was pressured into sexually provocative lyrics and outfits and the like, she refused to cooperate. And depending on who you talk to, she either left the label dropped her and said, you're either going to become the next Christina Aguilera or you're not going to be on the label Justin Bieber. Next thing you know, she's off the label. But she's still being managed by Selena Gomez's father and still best friends with Selena Gomez. And she's like, well, you know what? I'm going to go independent, just like Prince did. I don't need Island Records or Warner Brothers or any major label because I'm a nice Christian girl and I refuse to compromise my values. She puts all this on a YouTube video, so I watched it and I listened to her say it with her own mouth. So it's not just conjecture. She was asked to do sexual things if she wasn't going to do it. Some people would suggest that even more graphic stuff is required to get like a major label contract. And again, shortly after she refused to do that, she goes out on her own and is promoting her album independently, where she's performing in this nightclub, and that's when the lone nut gunman comes up and shoots and kills her. But it's interesting, if you looked at the video of her last performance, she's on a stage, and I guess the group that's going to perform either after her or before her is called, Before the End. Ironically enough, so superimposed behind her is the phrase "before the end," supposedly for the next act. Okay, well, we didn't take the sign down yet because it was the next act. And below that is a symbol of a pyramid within a circle, which is, now I'm sure a bright guy like Steve, what does that symbolize? Well, yeah, it's an ancient satanic symbol that dates and relates all the way back to, guess what? Ancient Babylon, pyramid within the circle, the rule of Satan over the entire world, symbolized. And that was the symbol that was on a sign behind her. So if you look at the video of her last song she ever performed, she's singing Before the End in front of a satanic symbol. Minutes later, she goes outside and she's assassinated. So you have that happening, and then just because it's not freaky enough that, this is happening not in a major city like New York City, but in Orlando, which is kind of like, to me, it's kind of a nondescript city and important. Then you have yet a third disastrous occurrence that occurs, just a few hours after that.
Was that the kid being dragged into the swamp by a gator?
An alligator
Come on!
killing a kid.
What was that?
But he kills him at Disney World. Like, you took your 2-year-old kid to Disney World, and some alligator just pops out of the water, grabs your kid, and kills him in 6 inches of water. So again, you've got these serendipitous occurrences during this period of time, April 21st to the summer solstice, all involved in occurring in the same city within a few hours of one another, within blocks or a few miles of one another. And every one of these locations is either a club related to entertainment or Disney World, which is the capital of entertainment in the universe. And so coincidences like that lead me to believe that it's not a coincidence, but that these are the outshowing of what Jesus had predicted. He said, when you see all these things
And you know the time.
begin to occur, now you know, lift up your eyes because your redemption is drawing near. When you see these things happening in Daniel, we're gonna look at that eventually at the end of Daniel chapter 12. He says, none of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. Seal up the book, Daniel, because Daniel's like, I don't understand what all this prophetic stuff means. What is this stuff? He says, seal up the book until the time of the end. And John is told in the book of Revelation, at the very last chapter of the book of Revelation, John, by the way, seal not up the book, for the time is at hand. And that was in 96 AD. That's about 2,000 years ago. So I would suggest to you all, the end of days that Daniel was hoping for, looking for, and trying to understand, began about 2,000 years ago in 96 AD, which means how much later in the day is it to the second coming of the Lord. So we should be anticipating at any moment. When we see crazy stuff like this, serendipitous occurrences like some budding pop star just shot by a stranger. It wasn't an ex-boyfriend like they said on the internet initially. Oh, it must have been an ex-boyfriend who came and killed her because he was just... It was a complete stranger just slaughtered a 20-year-old kid, in cold blood. And then a couple blocks later, a few hours later, the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. And then a few hours later, alligator kills a kid at the happiest place on earth, Disney World. And the interesting thing about the kid is that they found the body the next day in about 6 feet of water, about 15 feet from where the alligator dragged him in the water. And other than a few puncture marks, find out that the alligator didn't kill him or eat him. It just dragged him into the water and suffocated him. It just seemed weird, If the alligator had chopped him up and ate him, okay, maybe a crazed, hungered, a rabid alligator, and he chomps up his victim, and you find him in the belly of, just like you do with great white sharks and other alligator attacks. But the alligator didn't kill the kid. He didn't eat him. He just kind of dragged him and just killed him. Like almost like out of maliciousness. It's just odd. At a place not known for wildlife, or it wasn't at the zoo like a few weeks ago. Remember we had the kid that fell into the silverback gorilla pit, and the gorilla was dragging around. They ended up killing the gorilla. This wasn't at the zoo in the deadly alligator swamp exhibit. This was in a lagoon next to a luxury hotel that just says, no swimming. Didn't say anything about alligators, but I just think it's odd. And because of those serendipitous occurrences, you have to ask yourself, and Bond raises a good point. He says, is Daniel a prophet? Or is he just a guy that really studied his word and kind of knew what's coming because he was studying? And the answer is he was both. Because he was studying the book of Jeremiah. And through studying the book of Jeremiah, he kind of did the same analysis we're doing right here. Like, hey, wait a minute. Jeremiah said something about 70 years of captivity, and I'm like, calendar, we're almost at the end of the game. And he could tell by studying the Word of God that certain prophesied truths about the liberation of Israel were about to come true, and he got excited. But then he's also a prophet in the biblical sense, like a Jeremiah or like a Ezekiel, because God specifically sent a messenger, and that messenger was none other than Gabriel, to tell him things. He said, Daniel, you are highly favored with the Lord, and therefore, he's about to reveal to you what's going to happen with the whole world. And that's where we get this entire 70 weeks of Daniel prophecy. This is the prophecy that was revealed to Daniel, that Daniel was told to write down in a book. And because of that, Daniel is, in fact, a real biblical prophet. Not just a student of the Bible, but a real biblical prophet. And that's why I really like to use in the church where people are, I'm Prophet Jones, or somebody give you a business card, I'm Prophet Bill, or whatever. How are you a prophet? The canon of Scripture is already closed, and the Bible says the Word of God is what we're supposed to rely upon. And, Jesus Christ is saying yesterday, today, and forever. So if you're getting new truths revealed to you, like yesterday or the week before, or what, you almost want to can you even have a real biblical prophet now that we're at the end of days already, and you have the book of Revelation being the last of the prophetic books that is now open for business for everybody to understand. And again, Daniel 12 says what? It says, none of the wicked will understand, but the wise, they'll understand. The wise, making reference to those who study their word of God. The wicked being those involved in the occultic practices of ancient Babylonian paganism, which remanifested itself in the nation of Israel in the form of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is like this mystery religion that's, it takes Judaism and it twists in occultism. How did that happen? It happened because Israel was captive in the land of Babylon for 70 years. And during that 70 years, people began to, there's that big C word, compromise. And as they compromised, they began to adopt in Babylonian pagan practices relating to the other gods. And eventually, when they went back to Israel, they took Babylonian paganism with them and syncretized it together with their following of the Bible, which is what we would call Judaism today. And so you came up with this strange mixture of biblical Judaism and occultism, which today is now called the Kabbalah, which even Gentiles like Madonna and the like, are practicing and becoming involved in because they think it can help them do what? Get richer, more famous, and gain wealth of the world, right? And even eventually they're going to try to do the live forever thing, which is why the tree of life is such a big symbol in Kabbalah, which comes from ancient Babylonian paganism. Ingrid.
I think even too supporting him being a prophet, that Daniel, being a prophet, is that when Nebuchadnezzar couldn't remember his dream, God helped. God brought the dream to Daniel in order to reveal,
Now that's interesting. That's true because Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, and that's in Daniel chapter 2.
Daniel
the
chapter
dream
2.
of the metallic man, which we see depicted right here.
Yeah.
When we look at our biblical timeline, which gives us the entire 6,000 years of human history plus the 1,000-year millennial reign, we see that right about here on our timeline, Israel is in captivity in Babylon for 70 years. And we find out that King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of a metallic man, which gave you all of the major kingdoms of the world. And God also gave Daniel the ability to interpret it. So I don't know if you would consider that. I guess you would consider it a prophecy because it's Daniel supernaturally, through God directly speaking to him, able to tell Nebuchadnezzar, God told me to tell you this. And what God told me to tell you actually related to kingdoms of the world that haven't even come about yet.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why
I'm not trying to downgrade him and say.
No, that was a good question.
I'm just saying that, like when you read Daniel 9:1-2, he said, "Hey." I'm paraphrasing, of course. He said, basically, I've studied books and I've studied numbers and I see this 70. Yeah. And he says, here's my he's like, here's my understanding of all this I've been reading. And so he starts praying. And like you said, then Gabriel comes down and Gabriel's like, hey, of course, paraphrasing. Gabriel's like, hey, we're going to reveal to you the full understanding of all this stuff you've been studying. All these 7s and 70s that you keep reading about and you're talking about. We're going to reveal to you what they all mean. So to me, it's more of we're revealing to you the interpretation. Now you can interpretate all this stuff you've been studying, where it's more of a prophet, it's more of, without seeing or heard anything else, I'm told where, hey, this is what happened.
That's what he did in the Nebuchadnezzar's dream.
I agree with you. I think to the extent that he tells Nebuchadnezzar, well, I can't read minds. I'm not a soothsayer or whatever, but there is a God in heaven who can reveal dreams. And he told me this was what the dream was, and this is the interpretation thereof. So he's not claiming he had any supernatural power. Prophet Daniel, and I can burn incense and see into the future. No, he's saying I have a relationship with God, and God told me to tell you so that people would not be put to death because Nebuchadnezzar was on the rampage. He told his magicians, "You guys are a bunch of frauds." He said, "I want to know what this, this dream that's troubled me. I want it, explained to me." And the soothsayer's like, "Oh, tell us the dream, great king, and we will divine it for you and interpret it for you." He was like, "I can't remember it. So you got a bit of a problem. Not only are you going to interpret it, but you're going to tell me what the dream was, and then you're going to interpret it. And if you can't tell me what the dream was, then I'll know you're a fraud. And this time tomorrow, I'm going to, burn your house to the ground, cover it with feces, and I'm going to chop you and your family into pieces." And so they were panicked. And Daniel came to save the day and all that. But, you got to get ready? Race out. Okay, Vaughn's got to race over to Miami International. But Vaughn, thanks for coming in and giving us that little bit of insight. Thanks for prepping up those questions, which we'll discuss a little bit later. And yeah, man, always Vaughn's one of our originals, man.
Way back then.
And we will see you by internet next week, man.
Yes, you will.
Safe travels, man. Thank you for coming in. So what Vaughn kind of raised earlier, he pointed out that Daniel was studying some stuff, and as Vaughn makes his exit, we're going to.
I emailed them too.
Oh yeah, I got an email. We're going to have Ingrid read to us what it is that Daniel was actually studying at the time. So why don't we go ahead and flip over to Jeremiah chapter 25 and read for us, if you would, verses 1 through 2 first, and then read for us 5 through 12, and then keep your finger in there, because we're going to move on to Jeremiah 29, 1 through 14. So start out with Jeremiah 25.
Jeremiah 25, yeah.
Now, this is what Daniel in captivity was reading when, Gabriel came and interrupted him.
6 through 9?
25 verses 1 and 2 first, and then 5 through 12.
Okay. The word that came to Jeremiah concerning all the people of Judah in the 4th year of Joachim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, that was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon.
Okay, in other words, he just mentioned the name of some kings, and the Bible gives you specific names and dates because they want you to be able to pinpoint, to prove that this is a historically accurate book. So when Jeremiah is writing this is during the reign of the king of Judah known as Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, and this was the very first year that Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. And so, continue on from there, verse 2.
The which Jeremiah the prophet spake unto all the people of Judah and to all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying,
and then skip down and give us 5 through 12.
They said, Turn ye again now every one from his evil way, and from the evil of your doings, and dwell in the land that the Lord hath given unto you and to your fathers forever and ever. And go not after other gods to serve them and to worship them, and provoke me not to anger with the works of your hands, and I will do you no hurt. Yet ye have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord.
Okay, stop right there. So God is saying, listen, stop worshiping other gods. And,
we're good.
Turn back to the way, this is the nation of Israel. This is his nation that he created supernaturally. He's not talking to the pagans. He's not bringing the death penalty on the pagans for homosexuality or for adultery or for bestiality. He's letting the pagans do whatever they want. But for his own nation, Israel, that he created out of nothing, he has rules and regulations because he has to keep the nation pure. For what purpose?
So the Messiah can come.
There you go. So the Messiah will come through an untainted line. So he has, just like, your parents didn't discipline other kids for acting up in the grocery store when you were a kid. They disciplined you, right? The other kids act a fool. Well, Mommy, they're playing with the toys. And we're like, I don't care. They're not my kids. Shut up. You're my kid. I'm going to tell you what to do. And so your parents, his mine did in public. And they were like, yeah, that's not my problem because they're not my kids. But they're doing it. They're like, yeah, well, you're not their child. So you're going to do what I say. And so God is doing the same thing with Israel. And Ingrid, go ahead.
Yet ye have not hearkened unto me, saith the Lord, that ye might provoke me to anger with the works of your hands to your own hurt. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts.
Oh, when that therefore comes, dang, dude. Like, see, I told you to be nice, and I would love you, and no harm would come to you. I would bring no hurt upon you. But you did such and such and so, and then you did such and such and so, and then you get that transitional phrase. Therefore, ouch, here comes the smackdown. What's the therefore? The therefore is there to let you know what's coming next isn't going to be pleasant. Therefore, Ingrid.
Because ye have not heard my words, behold, I will send.
Hate when you get the therefore and the behold in the same sentence, you know it's not going to be good after that. Behold, God just pronounced, behold, the Lord is against you. When you hear that from like God Himself, you might as well just pack it in.
Formal smack
Just
down
like,
now.
you know what? Let me just, pull my britches down and bend over and get the spanking down because it's coming. Therefore, behold. When you say behold, it's like this is gonna be awe, shock and awe. This is gonna be on CNN. So there you go.
I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land, and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment, and a hissing, and perpetual desolations.
Verses 10 through 12.
Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth, and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, the sound of the millstones, and the light of the candle. And this whole land shall be a desolation, and an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years.
There's our 70 years.
And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans will make it perpetual desolations.
Okay, so what we have here, God is saying He's going to use Nebuchadnezzar as his servant. He says, I'm going to take my servant Nebuchadnezzar, who is a pagan king, and I'm going to use him to discipline you. Like, I guess sometimes God would send somebody to beat me up, and on the way home from school or something, because I was like, mean to my sister or something. Like, I'm going to send Nate Frazier from around the block to beat you up and take your lunch money because you will not listen to what I told you to do when you go home after school and fight with your sister. And God is kind of doing that. He uses even the bad guys to do His will. And He used Nebuchadnezzar to impose punishment on Israel. He didn't, show up, hey, Nebuchadnezzar, I know you're a pagan king, you worship pagan gods, I'm the real God. Can you help me discipline my children, Israel? No, He put it in the heart of Nebuchadnezzar to give Israel an option. When Nebuchadnezzar took over, he basically wanted the nation states and the areas that he governed to pay obeisance to him and pay taxes. And Israel, because the temple was still standing, the priests were like, freak you, we've got no God but the Lord, and we've got our own kingdom, and we're not going to pay any taxes, and we're not going to listen to what you say, and you can't tell us what to do. Nebuchadnezzar was like, look, I've been trying to work with you guys, and I'm not taking you guys into captivity. I'm not going to make you slaves. Just pay your taxes. Stop, tearing down the Babylonian structures that we built in the land, and you won't have any problems. And you can go on with your life. Just respect our ability to be present. Just like Rome in the time of Jesus. The Romans had Judea, and they had their Temple of Herod or the Palace of Herod and the Roman artifacts in the land of Israel, and the Jews just sort of had to accept it, or else Rome would bring, their iron-nailed boot down on their head. So Nebuchadnezzar, after several warnings, just got fed up and said, listen, you guys are not cooperating with me, and it's because of your religious zealot priests. They're putting in the hearts of the people to rebel against my rule. And all of this was within the plan of God, because even the prophets were prophesying lies. Remember, they prophesying lies to the king, like, what saith the Lord? Oh, the Lord said that it'll go well with you. All you need to do is burn a couple of more incense and, kill a couple more sheep and give me a bigger quarters in the presidential palace, and I'll make sure that things go well between you and the Lord. And so the king kept on doing what he was doing. And so God said, you know what, I'm going to have to take the dramatic and terrible act of sending Nebuchadnezzar in and having him do what? Cut right at the heart of the nation of Israel, which would be what?
Temple.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the king's palace. He sent Nebuchadnezzar in. And this is really how you know he's had it with Israel. Because you're worshiping false gods. You're even sacrificing your own children. You're engaging in practices like homosexuality, bestiality, and child sacrifice. I'm going to destroy the temple. Now, you'll know that I don't have anything to do with you, because you won't have your blood sacrifices to atone for your sins in the temple. Animal blood sacrifices, not human blood sacrifices. So God sends Nebuchadnezzar in to destroy the temple. And he destroys the temple on the 9th of Av. And then in 70 AD, it turns out the temple is destroyed on exactly the same day, centuries later, as God's way of saying, this is me behind all of this. And this was because you didn't recognize my son Jesus when he came the first time. So God sends Nebuchadnezzar in, destroys the temple, and he deports all of the important young guys like David back to Babylon and makes them servants in the kingdom of Babylon and kills everybody else. Okay, so Jeremiah chapter 29, 1 through 14. This is also something that Daniel was reading at the time that he was visited by Gabriel, the archangel.
Now, these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders which were carried away captives, and to the priests and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. After that, Jeconiah the king, and the queen, and the eunuchs, and the princes of Judea and Jerusalem, and the carpenters and the smiths, were departed from Jerusalem by the hand of Elisha and the son of Shaphan, and Jeremiah the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah the king of Judah sent unto Babylon to Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts,
Here we go. Thus saith the Lord,
the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon.
Now wait, who's writing this letter? Who's saying this?
This is Jeremiah.
No?
It's God.
Oh, it's
Oh, thus says
Oh,
the
God.
Lord.
Jeremiah's not the Lord, right? If it says,
Jeremiah is writing the letter, but
I asked who was
by the
speaking. I didn't ask who wrote the letter. I said who's speaking, right?
Lord.
Right. So, when you read the letter and it says, signed God, that's him. He's speaking this directly to you.
Yes.
And he's saying, thus saith the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
I caused you to be carried away from Jerusalem to Babylon. It wasn't Nebuchadnezzar of his own accord. God put it in his heart to do that. Which means what? God was so ticked off with the nation Israel, he's using Nebuchadnezzar to accomplish his will. So it's not like Nebuchadnezzar overcame God and somehow God didn't have the power to stop a Babylonian king. God is saying in a letter that he dictates to Jeremiah, so Jeremiah can, give it to the people, just so you know, the reason why you're in captivity in Babylon is because I sent you there. I'm the one that sent Nebuchadnezzar to do this to you. Man, this is a real stunning rebuke of the nation Israel and its leadership. And it goes on to say,
Build ye houses, and dwell in them, and plant gardens, and eat the fruit of them. Take ye wives, and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that they may be increased there and not diminished. And seek the peace of the city, whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it. For in the peace thereof shall be ye have peace.
okay, so right there you see that God is tempering justice with mercy. He's dictating this letter to Jeremiah, saying, okay, I sent Nebuchadnezzar. Now if you play ball and do the right thing and submit to the captivity that I've sent you. I'm going to let you get married. I'm going to let you have wedding parties. I'm going to let you do whatever. Do what he tells you to do because I'm manipulating him behind the scenes. Even I, the Lord, I can control even kings, even foreign ones. And I'm going to have him treat you decently and let your daughters get married and let your sons have jobs and do whatever. But just play ball and sit out 70 years, take your punishment like a man, and when it's over, we'll all be good. Okay? This is what I want you to do. Submit to the authority of King Nebuchadnezzar, who's doing stuff that I told him to do. Because you deserve to be disciplined, right? Right? You've been in a situation where your parents, no, David, I told you, no driving, you stayed out too late, and, I smelled alcohol in your breath, and I'm taking the car away for a month. Now, just play nice, and then by the time we get around to senior prom, we're going to have a great time. We'll take care of you. I'm going to buy you a car before you leave for NYU. But you're on punishment for the next 30 days. Don't try to play games with me. It's better to just submit. He's like, I'll let you use your iPad. You can still have DirecTV in your room and all that. You just can't drive the car for 30 days. And you can't have anybody over the house. Okay, so you submit and you go along with it. But Israel, they weren't having it. But God goes on to say,
For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you, neither hearken to your dreams, which ye shall cause to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. I have not sent them, saith the Lord.
Stop right there. So now, this is a perfect example of how religious people, to generate income for themselves and to generate prestige for themselves, will go to people in power, whether it be kings or presidents or congressmen or somebody who has a substantial amount of money in his corporation or whatever, and they'll tell them things that the rich and powerful person wants to hear. So that the rich and powerful person will reward them, whether that be with, like in churches, like tithing, like the guy who gives the biggest tithe becomes the deacon, he gets his name tag, and he gets to park his Bentley in a special parking spot, and his name gets put on a plaque in the wall, whatever. And so, that guy is in relationship with the preacher, because the preacher's telling him wonderful things. Hey, guess what? The Lord's going to give you a beautiful wife, but I'm already married, she's ugly. No, the Lord's going to take care of that for you. The ugly wife is going to be taken from out of your life. I thought I only could get married once. No, the Lord is saying that there's a special dispensation for you. And you deserve a Victoria's Secret supermodel. I've always wanted one of those. Yep, the Lord is telling me to tell you that you can have it. Now, if He's been happy with your tithing. You've been given 30% of your vast corporate income. Now, the Lord is telling me, if you up that to 50%, that Victoria's Secret supermodel wife is as good as yours. And so religious guys are telling people in power things that they want to hear. And so you had the priests in the temple and so-called prophets of the Lord saying, listen, if you resist against Nebuchadnezzar and refuse to cooperate and go to battle, the Lord's going to give you a devastating victory over Nebuchadnezzar. It's going to be shocking and startling. And I'll get to keep my robe, and you give me a bigger quarters for all the good stuff I did, because I've been interceding on your behalf with the Lord. And so the king of Israel is like, oh, okay, religious man, here you go. Here's some more money. Go talk to the Lord for me. And so God is saying, don't listen to these guys. They're lying to you. These false prophets are lying to you and telling you things. I haven't sent them. And how many times in the church have we seen, just like in ancient Israel, we've seen false prophets coming and saying things in the name of the Lord that are contrary to what's already written in the Word of God. And if we already have it in black and white, and they did, because Jeremiah wrote it down in a form of a letter, which became the book of Jeremiah. And he read it to the kings, and he gave it to them and said, here, look, this is what the Lord told me to tell you, and here it is in black and white. And the soothsayers and the religious high priest guys were telling the kings and his administrators of Israel different things than what God had already written down in black and white in the book of Jeremiah. And so whenever we go with the religious guy who has, oh no, the Lord revealed to me in a dream, you're supposed to marry Christy Turlington, supermodel. I'm already married. No, the Lord, the dreams don't lie. The Lord said that you're going to be married to a supermodel wife before the year is out. Wow, okay, so I guess it's okay for me to divorce my wife. And so they go ahead and they do things because the religious guy said in a dream, it was revealed to me that God said it was okay. God is saying, ignore dreams.
Yeah.
Don't follow dreams. Follow what's written in black and white. And as a result, consequences occur when they don't do that. So, Ingrid? I'm sorry.
For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you, and perform my good word towards you in causing you to return to this place. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Then ye shall call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me, and when ye shall search me with all your heart.
Read that again, please.
And ye shall seek me and find me, when ye shall search for me with all your heart. And I will be found of you, saith the Lord, and I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all nations and from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord. And I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive.
And he goes on to say, because you have said the Lord has raised up the prophets of Babylon, and so on and so forth. The Lord is basically saying, listen, I'm going to send you to Babylon for 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the 70 years are over, you'll come back and it'll be all good. And, eventually the king of Israel wouldn't cooperate and he wouldn't go willingly. God sends Nebuchadnezzar in and the temple is destroyed. If they'd gone willingly, he probably would have let the temple stand and it would have been empty, but he would have let it stand and they would have just gone away for 70 years. Also, to give the land the 70 years rest, because, we find out that in addition to, worshiping false gods and other things of that nature, that also what Israel was doing was, because they were an agrarian country that grew crops for a living, they were growing the land and not resting on the seventh year. So just like we have a week of days here in the United States and in the West, they had a week of years. So that if you had a week of 7 years, the Sabbath year would have been the last of the 7 years. Just like on the seventh day you rest because it's the Lord's Sabbath, God said that you have to give the land its Sabbath rest. And so we find out that because Israel was growing crops in the 7th year, because the land was fertile, they were, man, we better start growing. We better keep growing it while the land is fertile. Instead of resting the land for the 7th year, they grew the land of Israel through the 7th year. And they did this over and over and over and over again, and they ended up doing it over the course of 490 years, right? And so as a result of that, over that 490 years, that means that 1/7 of the 490 years was Sabbath days rest owed to the land. So if you had 490 years of illegal growing, one of which year, every 7th year, was supposed to be a day of rest, how many years would you owe the Lord's land?
70.
You would need 70, right?
6 years.
Yep. So there you have it. So if they, Ingrid, you got your point.
In Leviticus 25.
Read it.
6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for the Lord. Thou shalt neither sow thy field, nor prune thy vineyard.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's Leviticus what, Ingrid?
That's 25, 3 through 4.
That's wonderful. That's the Sabbath rest for the land. So there wasn't only a Sabbath for men, there was a Sabbath for the land. And so we find out, and I think it's recorded later in Jeremiah, that God is saying that you're going to be taken away in Babylon in captivity until the land has enjoyed her Sabbath's rest. In other words, so what do we see? We see for 490 years you violated these laws, but since you only grew 1 year legally, I'm going to divide the 490 into 70, or in 7 into the 490, you owe me 70 years. Then the land will enjoy her 70-year Sabbath rest. Because we now find out through agrarian scientists that if you grow land and you don't rest a field, you will leach the nutrients out of the soil itself, not out of the plants, but out of the soil. The nutrients will be leached out, and the soil will turn basically to sand, and you won't be able to produce life in the future. So you have to, just like you have to rest your body, you have to rest the land. And so God allowed Babylon to come in and take them captive, and that's where we get this 70 years. The 70-year Babylonian captivity wasn't just some type of arbitrary number. This was an exact mathematically precise punishment based on Israel's not allowing the land to enjoy her Sabbath's rest. And so, yeah. But the verse that Ingrid read, though, verse 11, it says, read that again, verse 11?
I'm slipping through the Bible.
For I know the thoughts I think towards you,
Okay.
saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a hope and a future. This verse almost always applied to the Christian church. And it's almost like that verse from 2nd Chronicles that says, my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and I will hear them from heaven and heal their land. And I remember the first time I read that it was quoted at the front of a Gideon's Bible, and just above it was the American flag, drawn. And I was like, oh, God put a verse in here about the United States. But these verses are promises to the nation Israel. So yes, for a Christian, does God know the thoughts he has towards me and plans to prosper me? Yes. And if he's going to prosper ancient Israel, it's probably likely that he also wants me to prosper. Yes. But he's not talking about prospering me in the physical life here on earth. Here, he's talking about prospering Israel physically and specifically. After the Babylonian captivity, I'm going to prosper you in the land, and you're going to grow, and you're going to be powerful, and whatever, and so on and so forth. I know the plans that I have for you, plans to give you a hope in the future. But he's not saying that to the earthbound physical church here on the planet Earth. He's not promising us this promise, because then it would be contrary to the promises about the rapture and going to the Father's house. And so I see this verse being preached and taught by sort of prosperity preacher teacher types, and it just simply is not correct. It's out of context.
It's hugely. Greg Laurie is the one that comes to mind that I first heard do the same thing, and that's exactly the way it was preached. Exactly that, where it was a prosperous sort of God has good things for you in mind. And complete disregard for the actual context of that verse.
Yeah. Ingrid?
I just found 2nd Chronicles.
Oh, read it real quick.
And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where there were servants to him and his sons into the reign unto the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years.
70 years is how long?
70 years.
Oh, that's beautiful. Good find, man, because that's the one I had in my other one and have there. Which one is that again? The 2nd Chronicles?
2nd Chronicles 36, 20 through 21.
2nd Chronicles 36, verses 30 through what?
3rd chapter 36, verses 20 through 21.
Okay, I'm sorry. Say that again. 2nd Chronicles.
2nd Chronicles chapter 36, verses 20 and 21.
Read that for us again, because that's key. Because that's the verse in particular where God is specifically saying, I'm keeping captive until the land enjoys her Sabbath rest. You also take me off by worshiping these false gods and all that stuff. But I'm only going to impose the amount of penalty for the specific Levitical violation. There's a specific year, day of the week, year analogy that we find in Leviticus 25, and I'm going to punish you for that specifically. And that's specifically what you're being punished for. And so give me that again, Ingrid. 2 Chronicles, chapter 36, verses 20 and 21.
And them that had escaped from the sword carried away he to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years.
Wow. That's awesome, man. That's great. That's great. So we find out then that, yeah, Daniel is reading Jeremiah. We find out in the Chronicle of the Kings that is the reason why Israel went into captivity in Babylon, was because they did not keep the Sabbath land. So now let's flip over to Daniel chapter 9, and we'll pick up where Daniel has now been in Babylon for a number of years now. And he's already had the metallic man dream and revealed the dream to the king, and he's been exalted to a high position of authority in the kingdom of Babylon. And remember when we were reading the book of Daniel that it doesn't run in chronological order. In other words, chapter 1 it doesn't necessarily get followed by chapter 2, and then chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're kind of chronologically out of order. So we find out that in Daniel chapter 2, he's a really young, teenage boy or whatever. And then in Daniel chapter 9, we find out that he's an older man who's been serving for a long time. And generally speaking, 2 comes first, then 9 will come next. But when you get to 7 and 8, you kind of will get confused chronologically. We're not going to look at those tonight. But let's take a look at Daniel chapter 9, verses 1 and 2, Phil.
In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus.
Okay, stop right there. Okay, now it's saying, in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the Medes. Wait a minute. But who was the king when Daniel got hired to work in Babylon?
Nebuchadnezzar was the king, but he saw 3 kings during the time that they were in.
Say that again?
So he was in jail during 3 different kings.
He was in captivity. Yep.
Captivity during
Yep.
3 years.
So Nebuchadnezzar eventually gets replaced because he got old.
Mm-hmm.
And, his grandson took over after that. And it was Belteshazzar. Yep. And then Belteshazzar is the guy who saw the handwriting on the wall, like God is ticked at you because you're a loser. And look at what it says on the wall. Many take old farson, which means number, count it, completed. And he says, Daniel, you interpreted for my grandfather. What does this mean? And Daniel looks at it and says, this means that God has numbered your days as the king of Babylon and completed them. And this time tomorrow you won't be ruling anymore. It says that he had a bowel movement and his joint was loosed, and he crapped his pants because he was so scared. And that very night, the Persians dammed up the river that would flow under the gates of the city, and they marched in through the dry riverbed and took the city of Babylon over without having to break down anything, to raise a sword. By the time they woke up the next morning, the Persians were all throughout the city of Babylon, and they took over in a bloodless coup. And from that point onward, the Babylonian Empire was now the chest of silver that Daniel had prophesied in Daniel chapter 2 to King Nebuchadnezzar. The chest of silver is the Medo-Persian Empire, because the Persians, through marriage, united with the Medes and created a new world empire that took over and superseded the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire. Now Daniel is studying the book of Jeremiah, and we find out Phil is saying at this point, this is during the reign of Darius. Right. Darius is a Mede. He's not even Persian. He's one of the sons of the Median princess who married into the Babylonian or into the Persian Empire. So Darius is now the ruler of what used to be Babylon, and Daniel's still living in his quarters in the ancient former Babylonian Empire, which is now the Medo-Persian Empire. And so we find out, verse 2.
Okay. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem.
Okay, so it says I, Daniel, understood by what?
By books.
So he's talking about Jeremiah 25, 29, and Leviticus, all of which were already written and available for use as the Word of God. You didn't have a New Testament, you didn't have the book of Revelation, and you didn't have the book of Daniel written yet, but you had Jeremiah, and you also had Leviticus written. And so, if you would, Ben, verse 20. In fact, let's read verse 20 through 23.
And while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God. Yea, whiles I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding.
Wow, so what we find out then is that Gabriel, and it says the man Gabriel, but Gabriel isn't a man, he's an angel, but he appears in the form of a man. He says the man Gabriel appeared, and he gave him a message, and he said, Gabriel, he said it was the time of the evening oblation. Now Chuck Missler makes a point about, this shows the faithfulness and the attitude of Daniel, because there was no evening oblation at this point, because the temple had been destroyed for decades. But it's at about the time that there would have been an evening oblation, and Daniel's, he's praying and speaking, because what? He was reading the books, Jeremiah and Leviticus, and he found out what? Oh, wait a minute.
So almost at the end of the 70 years.
I'm only going to be in captivity in Babylon for, it says it right here, because he didn't even know. So he's studying his word, and he's sitting there, and just like, for many of us, we'll sit down and we'll read the word, and we'll be like, shoot, this is the specific answer. I was looking for a specific answer. I got a specific answer, and it says, wait a minute. It says right here, let me double check that. It says in the footnote, go to Leviticus. And he pulls out his Torah, and he looks in the book of Leviticus. The land is old, seventh year, and we were, how long have we been violating that? And he goes over the Chronicles of the Kings, and he says the land was cheated out of its rest over the course of 490 years, and so they went into captivity until the land enjoyed her Sabbath rest. So he said the Sabbath is one day out of the week, and there's 7 days in a week, so if there's a week of years, because they grew crops in a week fashion. Instead of week of days, they thought in terms of weeks of years, because they would grow the land for 6 years, and then they would rest the land for the seventh year, just like you would go to work for how many days?
6 days.
And then on the seventh day, you would do what? Why? Because it was the
Sabbath.
Okay, so they applied that same principle for the man for a 7-day work week. And they took that same principle and extrapolated it out into years for the land itself. So if a man works for 6 days and then has a Sabbath days rest on the
70 days.
On the seventh day, then when you apply that to the farmers, they would work the land and grow the crops for how many years?
6 years.
And then on the
7 years.
7th year, they rest the land. For how long?
A year.
For 1 year. And then at the end of that 1 year, you start all over again. Just like, at Sunday, when that's over, you start all over. Monday, now we're back at the beginning of the week. Okay, and so Daniel's reading this stuff, and he gets excited, because he's like, holy crap, wait a minute. So, I got bro, I was 14, I just finished junior high school, and he's looking at his calculator, and this is year 69. I'm gonna be out of here next year. Whoa, I got like 12 months left. And now he's excited. And then he starts praying, and Vaughn was asking the question, like, why did he pray when he realized the time was short? Well, it's kind of like when, for instance, Steve and I, we do it, and Ben joins us on weeks. We go out and we do street evangelism, and we do stuff like that. And then you see something like this mass shooting in Orlando, or you see, cultic assassinations of deaths, mysterious deaths of famous people in the entertainment industry, or you'll see things like, new laws that are passed that kind of suspend or whatever, civil rights and the like. And when it's kind of bad to the extent you're like, man, we are in the end of days. We're seeing transgender bathrooms, and we're seeing situations where men can't be men. And I saw the I Am Jazz thing that came on. I couldn't help myself. I had to watch it, Steve. It's goodness gracious, man. That the iniquity of the Amorites is almost full, man. And it was funny because in that show we talked about it last week, and in last week's episode, that the I Am Jazz show about the little 14-year-old transgender boy who pretends to be a girl and who's now having to struggle with antidepressants, take massive amounts of antidepressants because the tremendous amount of estrogen that he's being fed is causing him to have the side effect of severe depression, because the body's fighting back against these female hormones that are being foisted upon his male body, and the body's in shock, and it's causing him to have severe depression. But it was interesting because, this kid Jazz actually has two brothers and a sister, and one of the brothers was a high school football player up in Boca Raton or wherever they're at, right up the road. Everything seems to be happening in South Florida, man. Like, we're right in the heart of California. Even the guy that did the mass shooting, he did the mass shooting because he was at Bayfront Park, and supposedly his dad says that he saw two gay men kissing, and he was so offended because it happened from his kids that he hatched the plot right there in Bayfront Park to assassinate all gays right there because of what happened there. And he worked for a security company that does security for, turns out, my building. He worked for the same company. That doesn't make me feel you got out just in time, But anyway, I digress. So what was I saying? I was saying, So the brother, who looks kind of like David, is about David's size, was a high school football player, and he played a couple different positions, but he was also the team's placement kicker and field goal kicker. He was actually really good and had the possibility of getting a college scholarship. You don't see field goal kickers getting scholarships to college very often. And so it was his last game, not only of the season, but of his career, because he was a senior, and they actually made the state playoffs or something, apparently last fall. And, he was in the championship game, and in the championship game, he was trying to kick a field goal to win the game or something like that, and somebody rushed in and tripped and fell, or got blocked into him, and fell on his knee, and tore his ligament and ended his career. But, at least they were in the championship game. And he was upset about it because his mother wasn't there. So, this is reality TV. They have the camera and they show his brother, like David, talking to you. It's like, I'm kind of pissed because, my entire career ended there. I could have gone to college and played. My entire football career came to an end on that play in the championship game. And Mom wasn't even there. Why wasn't she there? Because she was up in New York City doing a magazine photo shoot with her 14-year-old transgender son, who's now a girl. And he made some telling comments. He was like, his brother was like, well, don't worry about it. You're still going to college or whatever. So, yeah, but Mom has never been there for any of us. And it's not just me. It was for you too, and for, I guess they have a sister Allison or something like that. Have you noticed she was never there for any of our stuff? She was always there, only for Jazz. Because she was always doing something else. She couldn't come to my football games, couldn't come to Allison's recitals, couldn't come to your tennis matches. And he said, well, you should confront her and talk to her about it. And they show a scene that they're at some restaurant. And he says, my career ended on that play, man. I feel terrible about it. She's like, oh, yeah. That's terrible. I wanted to be there for you. But don't worry about it. It's no big deal. He said, that's a big deal to me. It was the last game I'll ever play For those of us that play sports, it's like when you take off that uniform. I remember taking off the uniform for the last time. That was a huge moment for me, man. I was like, never suiting up again, man. This is it. I'm not going to the pros. It's my last college game. Take the shoulder pads off for the last time. And it was like an emotional moment. And he said, yeah, it's not a big deal to you, maybe because, because you weren't here, because you were up in New York doing fashion stuff with jazz. And she was like, oh, no, it's not. I didn't mean there was no big deal because of that. I just meant that, injuries. And then he basically called her out and said, you've never been there for me. You've always been traipsing around. And she cried crocodile tears. And it was just, I just thought, like, the lowest rung of the lake of fire is going to be reserved for that woman. Because, the 17-year-old kid is saying, you basically derogated your duty as a mother to everybody in the family so that you could have your 15 minutes of fame by basically perverting your young son and making him into
sacrifice. You are again on the sacrifice thing. She sacrificed her last son.
Yeah, it's almost like it's on a symbolic level, like a child sacrifice. She sacrificed all 3 of her kids.
And to be famous, make your last son a girl.
And that's interesting. You'll be famous. You'll be on TV. And we'll be interviewing you.
You got it?
And I thought to myself exactly that, Phil. I said, there's no way I'm going to be sitting. I'm exhausted, tired. I got a busy career. No way I'm going to be sitting in my home, taking time out of my busy life, watching her on television, but for the fact that she took her little boy and bombarded him with estrogen and made him into some kind of freak of nature. And she's famous now. And it is just like you said. She made a child sacrifice to the entertainment industry god, who we know is the god of this world. And in exchange, she's got fame and fortune, and she's writing a book, and she's on television every week, and it's exactly that. And her other kid is sitting there saying, like, my whole life passed by, and you really weren't part of it. And you can never have it back. And then later, he's the more mature adult about it. He's talking to his other brother, and he said, I can never have those moments back. I'll never play football again. I'll never have my last game again. I'll never graduate from high school again. And she's not part of any of that. And then he said, but I'll forgive her. I have to. He says, I have no choice. I mean, I've got no choice but to forgive her, or I'll be like bitter for the rest of my life. So what choice do I have? So she's my mother. I love her. And it was like he was the adult in this. Like, what she did was terrible. She's basically a fame, whatever. And she's pursuing fame by exploiting her youngest child. But he forgives her because he has to, because that's my mother. What am I going to go through life hating my mother? But my childhood is over now. I'm going to go off to college, and that's it. And my mom wasn't part of it because she was busy, making her little boy into a girl and getting famous for it. So we live and I saw that, and I said to myself as I sat there on the couch, the iniquity of the Amorites is come to the full. It's almost, what verse? Bonus gold points if anybody can find that particular passage. The iniquity of the Amorites is almost come to the full.
Ezekiel, but
maybe. Gosh, that's a powerful verse. Because that's a verse where, the prophet is saying, God is, he's been patient with Israel and he's holding back judgment because he's patient, but the iniquity of the Amorites, the foreign nation that surrounds Israel, that Israel was adopting, wicked practices from, it's almost come to the full, and God's going to have to bring judgment down on the Amorites and wipe them out and do all kinds of stuff. And, I was thinking that when I saw that, with this mother doing these things to her, hurting her children. Mothers are supposed to be like, I'll run in front of a freight train for my kid, but really you're sacrificing all your kids to be in front of a television camera because you want to be famous. And I don't know, it made me think we are really in the last days. And then I thought about that alligator attack, and I wasn't there, so I can't cast aspersions, but I just thought, like, if your 2-year-old kid, I've never had a kid, but I've been close to kids before, and if I had a 2-year-old kid, and I'm in 6 inches of water with my 2-year-old kid at the world's most famous amusement park, or in a swamp, or in a lagoon, or whatever, right here in Miami, and an alligator comes up and grabs my kid, I'm like, dude, it's on.
That's
One,
good.
either you,
That's not even
either
happening.
you and my kid are gonna die, or me and my kid are gonna
Right.
die. But somebody's dying if you don't let go of my kid. Because the alligator grabbed the guy's kid, and he grabbed the kid. It's not like the kid swam off into the water and got crunched on and disappeared under the wave. And, hey, where'd my kid go? And they,
Fight off the alligators.
he was standing there with the kid. The alligator grabbed his kid, and he's like, hey, let go. And he's fighting with the alligator. And then the lifeguard comes over, and the mom comes over. And all three of them are like, the kid's like, Mom, help, Dad, the alligator has me. How did the alligator get the kid? Well, further, they can creep up. When I went up to Lake Okeechobee to speak at, that function for Anquan Bolden, the guy from the NFL, I went over to Lake Okeechobee later because they said it's the largest inland lake, other than the Great Lakes in Michigan, where I grew up. And sure enough, it's this huge, gigantic lake. But man, I'm telling you, I went up to the shore and I could see there was just every time I looked around, these gigantic alligators that were like little submarines. You could see only their eyes just moving towards me. They said, "Oh, who's the guy in the cool blazer? Let's go check him out." And I could see him coming in, man. And I was like, dude, there is no way I would step foot that. But the long and short of it is just like, if the alligator grabbed the kid and the kid's body was found like 15 feet away, which for a football player like me, I converted into yards. So 3 feet in a yard, that means 5 yards. I got about that's less than what I average per carry as a running back. That's like from here to there. If the body is submerged there, after the struggle, like the alligator just won and just took the kid right there, and you're like, oh, well, forget it. I mean, I would have just grabbed the alligator and we all would have went for a ride. I just didn't understand how the kid's body,
in the same room, basically.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Not in the smaller than this room.
I just didn't understand how at some point you just said, all right, fine then.
You can have
And then he only goes a few feet away, and you don't like dive in, and he didn't eat the kid. The kid drowned.
More child sacrifice.
I'm just wondering what in the world is going on, Ben. All I'm saying is if it's me, we're both drowning because I'm not letting go, and I just don't understand it. And when you see parents, I don't know, man. I see this jazz show and I see this woman and what she's doing to her kid, and it just horrifies me because I'm thinking, as a parent, you're supposed to lay down your life for your kids. David.
The world is starting to look a lot like, the descriptions of Sodom and Gomorrah. More and more.
Oh, excellent. Excellent point, young David. Sodom and Gomorrah, isn't it? It kind of is, right?
Yeah. It's exactly the descriptions of why he took it down. Sexual immorality, a lot of homosexuality.
Oh, that's a good point, Dave. Out of
And
the
it's
mouth
like
of babes.
more and more and more.
Because
It's 100% normal, both of them.
and not only, and the scary thing about it, and I stand there and I talk to you guys, but it's kind of scary because not only is the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah becoming normalized, it's almost becoming what would be the word for it?
Fashion.
It's what?
Fashion.
It's not only in fashion. I would say
But
it
it's
is,
forced, like
but
it
it's
is-
almost
it's
like becoming mandated.
Yeah.
And the guys that aren't in favor of it and aren't waving the rainbow flag are almost becoming
Outlaws.
demonized. I'm almost like kind of scared to say stuff like, goodness forbid, somebody says that crazy guy is opposed to homosexuality, and he says that a mother that allows her 14-year-old boy to be injected with estrogen and become a girl isn't a wonderful mother. Like, it's almost like it make the shooting and the conspiracy theorists out there are running amok on the net where, the whole shooting in a gay nightclub as opposed to, remember there was a shooting in the Christian church or whatever, and, the media did everything it could to avoid even, broadcasting that, because what did it do? It made Christians seem, martyrdom, sympathetic. But, the shooting in the gay nightclub, oh man, it certainly, it makes it a lot more difficult to criticize homosexuality. Not because the idea is that all fundamentalist religious people, whether they be Islamic terrorist fundamentalists that are part of Al Qaeda or whatever, are the same as fundamentalist Christians. And if fundamentalist Christian says that homosexuality is a sin, that's just a step away from saying it's okay to kill 50 innocent people with no warning. And no Christian of any stripe that I've ever met has ever suggested that. But yet, when you see Anderson Cooper, who's gay, on CNN, openly and proud about it, and Don Lemon, who's even worse, he's like flamboyantly gay, and he did everything in his power last night to try to draw an analogy between being a Bible-believing person who thinks homosexuality is a sin and killing 50 people in a club.
Same thing.
He did everything in his power to draw that analogy. I was infuriated. And we're getting to that point now where it's like, oh, homosexuality is a sin. Leviticus chapter 18. Oh, you're going to be on the watch list, and we should make sure your right to drive a car will be taken away because you think homosexuality is a sin, because that's the same thing as killing innocent people, right? And it's just not, right? Nowhere in the New Testament do you see, and they don't even understand that under the Levitical law that says homosexuality is a sin, and you take them outside the camp and you stone the person who engaged in bestiality, homosexuality, or heterosexual adultery. That only applied to
Israel.
The nation of Israel.
It's like, I wonder then, from a Jewish standpoint, is that within they're closer than to what Anderson Cooper is just trying to connect with Christianity. Jew, because they don't accept Christ clearly, and they believe in the Old Testament. Therefore, they believe in the anger and the punishment and the killing. Is that?
Unfortunately, modern day
and not
Jews
to say-
not even the same. Not even
What
like
is
it's modern day Judaism. Like doesn't even compare to what like it was in the time of Jesus.
it's a completely different
So-
paradigm.
It's like
Dave
it's Kabbalah,
is
it's
Jewish,
tradition.
so
Yeah. So
It's
What,
like
what did the Orthodox say, though?
Yeah.
Dave, go ahead.
Orthodox is very dark, very dark.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's-
they literally
there's
play
even-
with
there's-
rabbis. It's like
There's
you go
some,
around, they're selling kind of like the little saint cards with all that stuff. They sell that.
it's almost like Catholicism, right?
Oh, it is definitely.
It's-
because you see Satan is really good at marketing and branding.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, like look at the way homosexuality is viewed today.
Okay.
I mean, it's it was something that it was like you engaged in it, that was a sin, and now it's like, oh well, these people do that frequently. It's their lifestyle, so this is categorized as the type of people, and if you don't agree with that, then you're discriminating them, which is
Wow.
not necessarily.
So
how
David,
it is.
now as a Jewish kid, you've been Jewish all your life, and what would you say modern day Judaism is like? Because I experienced when I went over and studied in Israel, like you said, Kabbalah and the New Age.
It's like if I go there, I would be like almost kind of like an outcast. Even if I said something biblical, I would still be kind of an outcast because there's so many things that have been like put into it. Like there's so much Kabbalah, not even just Kabbalic traditions, and a lot of superstition.
Wow.
So much superstition, it's crazy.
I
Things that are like just put in there into Judaism, and it's like there's so many these strange new books added that are interpretations and these different books they follow.
So like the Talmud is an interpretation of the
yeah.
Torah,
Yeah.
but it's not biblical because the Talmud
Yeah.
isn't the Bible.
Yeah, and they actually say, from what I understand, I've heard this from 90 people, that the Talmud says that if you read the book of Daniel, your bones will explode.
Wow, man!
This is
I've heard
I was
things
like, are
like
you
that.
serious? No, it's like it's a thing.
Are you serious? And this
Because they're probably not supposed to read the book of Daniel because it has things they shouldn't know.
now you know what?
Including
I'll tell
pointing to the
you,
Messiah.
that sounds exactly like Roman Catholicism.
Exactly.
Because in Roman Catholicism and
Same source.
they said you shouldn't read the Bible.
At all.
You shouldn't read the Book of Revelation, especially because your head's going to explode, not your bones, because you're not intellectually gifted enough to understand what you're reading. God has raised up the bishop, the cardinal, and the priest to tell you what the Word of God says, and that's why they took such pains in the Roman Catholic Church to make sure that the Greek was translated into the Latin, and that all the masses or the religious ceremonies of the Catholic Church remained in Latin even after Latin became a dead language and was not spoken, and it isn't spoken in any country on the face of the earth, but you still have the Catholic Church, especially prior to Vatican II, demanding that masses be in Latin that nobody can understand.
Meaning this repetition, Hebrew.
Say
Why
that
do
again?
these Jews even speak Hebrew?
Right.
It's not your native language. It makes zero sense. Yes, it was a language that was given to your nation, but it's even the Hebrew today isn't even the same Hebrew that was spoken back then. It was invented in the late 1800s.
You're right.
By Ben Yehud, I believe.
Yes, David, man.
It's not even the same language.
My young
Why are you
Jewish
sticking
scholar
to this language and putting it? You just literally translated your scripture to a different, new version of the language to pretend that it's we have to follow this Victor tradition. You don't even understand what you're saying. All you're doing when you go to Hebrew school, all you're learning is meaning, repetition, and you're repeating the same things over and over. And then you say, all of a sudden you're a Jew, you're bar mitzvah, from repeating the same things and you have no idea what you said.
It's like being a low-level Freemason. We
Wow.
were repeating ceremonies, we were participating in ceremonies and memorizing things, and we had no idea. And we were like bright college kids, like, what the freak does all this stuff with the pyramid mean? Why are we memorizing all this Greek stuff? And nobody would tell us anything. Like, no, you have to do it or you're not going to be initiated in. And you draw an excellent analogy there, Dave, to the rote memorization. And it says in both the Old and New Testament, don't make vain prayers to me, like memorization and repetition. It's absolutely an abomination to me. And, oh gosh, you made another really good point that I wanted to...
Sodom and Gomorrah?
No, just right now. The
1800
rabbi,
created
1800s. The Hebrew. Yeah, and it ties directly into what we're studying now. Interestingly enough, David pointed out, he said, we're forced to learn Hebrew, and nobody even speaks Hebrew. Even though the language was given to our nation, most people don't really understand it. It's interesting that you point that out because it was because of the Babylonian captivity that Hebrew, the original Hebrew that God gave, maybe to Adam and Eve in the garden, and that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob spoke, became lost. During the Babylonian captivity, the scriptures, the Tanakh, the Bible, the Old Testament, was translated from Hebrew into a new version called the Septuagint. And the Septuagint, which is the most commonly used version of the Old Testament amongst any Bible scholars, Jewish or otherwise, was the Hebrew scriptures being translated into Greek because after they had been in captivity in Babylon for 70 years, nobody spoke Hebrew anymore.
Yeah, it
And
was
so
Aramaic, and hence Daniel wrote in Aramaic.
Well, actually, he only wrote 2 chapters in Aramaic, but some was in Hebrew. But the Bible was translated, the Tanakh was translated into the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, into Greek because the Jews in the Babylonian captivity couldn't read Hebrew. So they couldn't understand what the scriptures said. And Hebrew and Aramaic are so closely aligned to one another that if you could read one, you could probably read the other. And Daniel wrote in both, Hebrew and Aramaic. But the problem is that the people that wanted to remain in Babylon, because after Artaxerxes Longimanus, we'll get to that next week because we're running out of time, gave the decree allowing Babylon to release, or the Jews who were captive in Babylon to be returned to Israel. Some of the Jews decide, hey, dude, I got a high-rise facing the ocean, or they didn't have an ocean in Babylonia, but hey, I'm living in a condo facing the ziggurat there. I'm in one of the higher floors of the pyramid. I'm not going back. I like it here. I got a good business here. And many decided to stay and lost their ability to speak and read in Hebrew and Aramaic. And so the Septuagint was created as an answer to the dispersion Jews because northern Israel had been deported even prior to Babylon. And they got deported to Assyria in like 722 BC. So the 10 northern tribes of Israel got taken captive because God was upset with them to Nineveh and Assyria in 722 BC. And then 100 some odd years later, in the 500s BC, Babylon took the rest of Israel, Judah, captivity in Babylon. And those guys, many of them chose to stay. there are no 10 lost tribes of Israel. That the sort of Hebrew Israelite nonsense where blonde-haired, blue-eyed people from Europe are really the Jews because they were the lost tribes. Tribes weren't lost because they could go back home after the captivity ended. Many went back to Israel, and some decided not to go back because they didn't want to. So they weren't lost or exiled forever, but they lost their ability to speak and write Hebrew and Aramaic, and so
It's exactly like the slave come out from Africa, who were deported, and some decided to go back to Africa, and some decided to stay.
what country that would be? Liberia.
Senegal, Liberia, Ghana, all these parts, Sierra Leone.
Had African American slaves that went back to Africa
Yes, my
and
family go back
from wait, so how's your family tree work out?
Sierra Leone. So, well, my ancestry come back from Sierra Leone, and then we moved to Equatorial Guinea. So my name King is slave name.
It is, right? King is an English name.
Yes.
So you're saying that African American slaves left the United States, went back to Africa
Yes.
to, in your
Africa.
case, which country was it?
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone, and then went from Sierra Leone to where?
Say went to the center of Africa. So it was the east coast, the west coast from Africa, which was all the side that you have the ports that come out from Africa to America.
Mhm.
So they went back.
You
So
got
you
the
have
Ivory Coast
Liberia, Sierra Leone, Senegal, all this west coast from Africa. Okay, was the port that was the port, and then when they came back, that's why they came back. So
Yeah.
and
So many chose not to come back because it was just too hard to sort of assimilate to the culture you had left.
Decide to stay here as slave or free men, but they decide to stay here. So
That's what happened with Israel.
Yeah. So,
And that's why they created the Septuagint Bible, because people didn't want to go back. Like, it'd be too hard to figure out, the temple got torn down and they're trying to rebuild it, and it's not as fancy as it used to look. Because the temple that got rebuilt for Jesus' days, it wasn't as glorious and awesome as the Solomonic temple. And so some people are like, I'm staying in Babylon, man, it's nice.
So the temple was destroyed twice, right?
Yeah, on the same day, the 9th of Av. The 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, is the day of remembrance. April 9th, I think it is, and on our calendar or thereabouts, every year in April, Israel commemorates Tisha B'Av, because it is a day that lives in infamy, because it was the day that not only was the first temple, the Temple of Solomon, destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar back in the 500s BC, but then centuries later, on exactly the same day, the temple gets destroyed yet again in 70 AD by the Roman Empire. That's way too much to be a coincidence. That is God's way of saying, I've completed the temple system. We don't need blood sacrifices in the temple anymore, because we have a once for all time messianic blood sacrifice, who is also starts with K,
Kinsman Redeemer.
kinsman redeemer.
As English answer.
There you go, Ingrid. Yeah. And so, yeah, Dave, that's some awesome insights from the young Jewish kid here. But yeah, I think you're right, David. Sodom and Gomorrah has returned in full force, full effect. And in the 1950s in the United States, it would be unheard of to think that you would dress a 3-year-old boy like a girl, and that would be okay.
It was
What
considered
about
a mental
Joe, you said?
illness.
It was a mental
DSM,
illness, and the
whatever that is. Yeah.
DSMR, up through the DSMR 3R, which is the third revision from the early to mid 90s. I remember I had one when I first became a prosecutor, and homosexuality was still a mental disorder. And then, the gay lobby got it, after the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, that compiles the DSMR, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of mental disorders. And one year it was there, and the next year it wasn't in there anymore. It wasn't like there was some new molecular biology discovery or some Nobel Prize winning scientist discovered that there's a gene that no, they just took it out because of political pressure. And the point that Dave makes, I think, is an excellent one. We have returned to the time of Sodom and Gomorrah. And God was patient with Sodom and Gomorrah for a long time. But when it came time, and this is the perfect segue into...
Look at the Greeks, look at the Romans.
Yeah.
What happened each time?
They
came exactly Sodom and
absolutely.
Gomorrah, and kingdom fell.
Dare I say it? I don't want to say that, there's historical and anecdotal evidence that's overwhelming circumstantial that the Greek and Roman empires fell from within because of corruption based upon the prevalence of homosexuality amongst their leadership. Alexander the Great, great warrior, was a gay guy. And he died, at 30? Died a terrible death early, and that was it. And homosexuality became, the set piece for the Greek Empire, and then they turned to nothing, and the Romans wiped them out and removed them. And then the Romans...
Egyptians too also, right?
Say again?
I want to say the Egyptians as well.
Yeah, all the great... And you made the key sort of Sherlock Holmes moment discovery. At the end of the day, behind every great world empire is none other than the God of this world, who is... Is it Jesus?
No.
It's not Jesus, it's Satan. And he has certain calling cards. Human child sacrifice, homosexuality being the chief amongst them. And so when, just like in the recording industry, you're a 20-year-old, teeny bopper, and I want to be a star, we can do that for you. But hey, we're going to need you to do certain things. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to be a star? Yeah, absolutely. Do you have what it takes to be a star? I think I do. You willing to do anything? We think you can. Well, yeah. And then next thing you know, you're doing wicked, horrible stuff. Human blood sacrifice, sexual, perversion. And the same is true. The same way, the powers that be in the entertainment industry approaches an impressionable young teenage pop star, they approach the leaders of great nation states like, Emperor so-and-so, he's slipping. But a young man like you, David, we could see you, sitting atop the Iron Throne. What are you willing to do for it? Are you the type that we could back and support? Oh, absolutely. You're willing to do anything and sacrifice? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And next thing you know, David's the king of the world. But he's made certain sacrifices to obtain that position. And that's exactly, you're exactly right about that, that we are retrograding back towards Sodom and Gomorrah. I think it was Justice Bork wrote that book called Slouching Towards Gomorrah. I thought that was a great title for a book. He was saying basically American values and morals are decaying with each passing decade, which is why in the 1950s, homosexuality was unheard of. In the 60s, it became the Summer of Love in 1967, which we now know was a Tavistock drug-induced psyop. Did I say it? The theme of Captain
Wasn't as organic as we like to think, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, but even in the 70s, it wasn't as prevalent. But now it's almost like overnight. Things that in the 50s would never be countenanced in the United States. You'd be charged with child abuse if you injected your kid with estrogen and then drove the kid into a suicidal depressive fit so that you had to give him powerful antidepressants, which now is affecting his metabolism, makes him gain weight and can't play sports anymore. You'd be charged with child abuse. But now you're awarded your own television show, you're given, speaking opportunities, and you're invited to a cool place like New York City to receive awards for being so forward-thinking. So I think that we are seeing exactly what you said, Dave, a return to Sodom and Gomorrah. And interestingly enough, that does segue into the final point for tonight, is that God did eventually bring judgment on both the cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But what did he have to do first?
Get his people evacuated.
Take out
Burn it.
people.
He had to get his people out. So when he sent the angels into the city, he told Lot, get you and your family out of this city, for we can do nothing while you're here. And Lot gathered up his family and started heading out. And then when his wife turned back, because she loved Sodom and Gomorrah, because she was a local girl, she loved her sin, she was turned to a pillar of salt. She was ionized. Judgment came down in an instant. And whoever turned back was destroyed. But Lot and his children, they made it out free and safe. And that is the picture of the rapture. And we see the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah. We see that the wickedness of the Amorites has almost come to the full, and when it does, then the rapture.
She found it.
You found it?
No,
No.
she.
Who? Ingrid did?
Yes. Genesis 15:16.
We'll close with that, but let me finish. That's a gold star if that's the one. But that's exactly what we're seeing. God held off for a long time. Why? Because there were some people there, and He didn't want to hurt them. And the church is here in the United States of America, in the world, that's getting darker and colder. When you see the president standing up with rage and bitterness and hatred in his eyes and voice, speaking out, you know it's a coded message like you fundamentalist, Bible-believing Christians, you're what's holding back the final step of evolution in social progression. When you guys are out of the way, things will be all right. And God's going to have to get us out, man, because it's the wickedness of the Amorites has almost come to the full.
Bible and gun clingers.
What's the verse there?
I think Genesis 15:16.
Read it.
But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full.
That's it. That's it. It's almost like God is watching. He says, yeah, no, I'm going to hold off. But yeah, give me the three verses before that.
And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they shall come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full.
Yeah. Basically, I think he's kind of sort of saying there, I'm going to bring judgment on those folks.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give them a little more time. And then when the cup of my wrath is full, unleash it. It's going to be brutal. So, give me the side on that, Ingrid.
Genesis chapter 15, verse 16.
Well, I'll tell you, I love being able to have a class full of just
Go
brilliant.
to it.
Everybody here has not only a college degree, but graduate degrees. We have Harvard represented, got the 2 Ivy League degrees, a graduate degree, which I can't believe. And you guys are students of the Word. And let me tell you, that's important, boys and girls, because we're getting to the point. You can't rely upon churchianity anymore. The commercial guys in the pulpit, they're not talking about this stuff. Why aren't they talking about this stuff? Because it doesn't generate income. And if you guys don't take the responsibility, especially you men sitting out there, goodness forbid, that's your commandment for the Lord. If you're married, you are not just a believer, you're a priest in the eyes of God over your household. Wow. In the same way Christ is the head of the church, you're the head of your spiritual family, the spiritual priest. If you don't know the Word of God, you are going to be judged for your wife's lack of knowledge. He's going to hold you responsible for it, just like what? In the Garden of Eden.
Adam?
Yep. When Eve fell and ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Adam was held responsible because that was your wife. I gave her to you. You were her covenant. And you, instead of protecting her and keeping her from foolish, destructive actions, you went along with it. I'm holding you responsible for both of your sins. Ouch. And so for those of us, that are also men and not married, you also are special individuals. You are appointed by God to learn the Word well enough to teach it to others. And if you're not doing that, man, you haven't let just yourself down, but you've let God down, and there is going to be an accounting for all of that. So it's amazing to see that you guys are manipulating the Word of God finding difficult to find Old Testament passages, man, like at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about things that I'm not hearing coming from pulpits. I've been to like every church in the city, and I'm not hearing Christian radio. It just grieves me. My heart mourns when I listen to and watch Christian television and Christian radio. It's what did you say, Dave?
Pop culture.
It's pop culture. That's exactly what it is. It might as well be MTV or ESPN. It's entertainment. Newsnet. It has almost nothing to do with the Word of God. And yet these people are being paid to promote these shows and this 24-hour networks of Christianity on radio and television. And I'm not getting anything from it. It makes me think something's going on. This is being done intentionally. The prince of the power of the air, the god of the airwaves, Satan himself, he controls who can be on, who can be off. You got to have money to be on, and he controls the power to gain wealth. Don't let many of those guys fool you. Praying to have money come to you. Ancient Babylonian technique. Demonism involved. So, with that being said, wow, we just broached the topic of Daniel 7. Have we not covered a lot? A lot has gone on in the United States. The whole world has been focused on us right here in Florida in the last few days. And it is at once disturbing, but also it's exciting because you know that the iniquity of the Amorites has almost come to the full, and judgment is almost ready to come down on the side of Gomorrah. But before that happens, we got to get out of here. Rapture. So, with that, man, we'll close it up in prayer. Dave, I haven't, honored if you could give us a closing prayer there tonight.
Lord, thank you that we can all be here tonight, learning the Word. Thank you for giving us such a great teacher, Herb. He's really great, and it seems like the time until your return is near. So we wait for that, and we ask for you to bless us and keep us, and that we can stay close to your Word and stay close to what it is that you want from us, and that we can serve you as well as we can. So, Lord, thank you for protecting us, and thank you for everything that you've given us. Amen.
Amen. All right.